What page are we on?
Okay, I'll tell you the exact
I've
page.
been around the world several times without me.
Okay, we'll see if they actually join.
Well, my suitcase only came back this week.
So,
right.
we're going to go on page. We'll go from page 257.
No, I said
We'll go from page 257.
Forget the Hiroshi's.
Hello, Darren.
Okay.
Hello, Darren. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Good. Were you in that other chat? Was there the other meeting? And
I was.
because
Why
I
don't just
was
post?
scared to press it.
I think we should.
end one to start a new one.
I think you should post what it's on.
What it's on?
As in, like, you should post the link because it's changed
The
a
link.
few times.
The link has been the same. It's in the
Show
description.
this to him.
Here, this is what this on this. So
That's
the
link,
list
Darren.
is in the description. It hasn't changed. So
I'll forward it.
rachi.com.au/Tzurba/Shiur. I just sent it. Okay.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
We're a smaller crowd. So all good.
Oh, here it is.
Oh, Ruben coming back. All
Doctor, I
good.
have tonight. I have some medicine.
Good. How are we doing? Okay, so we'll start it. So this is good for everything. Good for the Jews. Okay, so we are on page. We'll just go back to page 257 if that's okay with you. We were discussing Sof Zman Kriyat Shema. That's what we were discussing. Sorry, book 10, page 257. We'll go from. Okay, we'll discuss. I'll just share screen. We were discussing Hilchot. Sof Zman was Kriyat Shema in general. We're finishing, but Sof Zman Kriyat Shema specifically. And we know that the Kriyat Shema has to be recited by the end of the third hour. And the question is, how do you calculate that third hour? There's a big machloket. Famously, it's attributed to the machloket in the Magen Avraham and the Gra. Right, that's how the machloket is typically attributed to. And we said, according to the Magen Avraham, you calculate halachic hours from Alot HaShachar to Tzet Kochavim. Whereas according to the Gra, the Vilna Gaon, you calculate it from nates, from sunrise to shkia, to sunset. As a result, the zmanim of the Gra are usually later. Hence you have Sof Zman Kriyat Shema according to Magen Avraham versus Sof Zman Kriyat Shema according to the Gra. And then the question is, how do we paskin? So we're just going to pick up from bottom of page 257. How do we paskin in this machlokes? In general, so there's different schools of thought in the Achronim, but let's have a look. It's source 22, the Igros Moshe we have here in Orach Chaim, Chelek Aleph says as follows. Bidvar Zman Kriyat Shema, source 22. Bidvar Zman Kriyat Shema b'shacharit. Hinei minhag rov hamakomot shebudinotenu Rusi velita. Right, most of our provinces, Russia and Lita, right, Lithuania, the custom is what? V'chein minhag kol yeshivot haya ad shalosh shot minei tzachama. So they will calculate the end of 3 hours from sunrise, like the Vilna Gaon. Kashitat Gra, the Gras, right? It's also, of course, it's the Gras. We are in Melbourne after all. There's also the Shita of the Alter Rebbe. Okay. V'chein hu ha'ikar ladina, and that's me'ikar hadin, the correct psak. That 3 hours from nates. B'chol ha'inyanim, in all aspects of calculating shas, in all halachic hours calculations. V'rak yechidim hayu machmirim la'atzmam ad gimel shot me'alot ha'shachar. And only individuals, lichidei skula were machmir on themselves to calculate from the earlier time, 3 hours from alot. Uvaluach, so when you come to make a calendar, yesh likba ke'etzem hadin. So if you want to be machmir on yourself, that's fine, says the Igros Moshe. But when you come to actually publish a calendar, you should put the zman of the gra. Umincha en hitpalel achar shkia, and also, so there you go, good musar, mincha you shouldn't daven after shkia as well. Rag b'shad achat yicholim nismoch al makilim. Okay, that's a separate discussion. Okay, that's a separate discussion. So fundamentally, the Igros Moshe paskins ikar hadim, we paskin like the gra, and that was the minhag in Lita and Poland, or Russia at least, and the minhag of the yeshivot. Those who want to be machmir were machmir, but the ikar hadim is to follow the gra. Now, when you look at inside though. At the Sephardi poskim, they are more inclined. This is what we ended off with last time. They're inclined to paskin like the Magen Avraham. Right, so, for example, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, if you look in source 23 in his Ma'amar Mordechai, he paskins outright like the Magen Avraham in calculating Sof Zman Kriyat Shema. Look in source 23. It says Rav Mordechai Eliyahu. I'm just going to Peter. Welcome on Zoom. I hope you're having a virtual whiskey, and I hope this means that you can come in person on Thursday. It's a good deal this way. So, okay. Good. Okay. So you can come both. That's the aim. But yeah, okay. Mama Mordechai, source 23. So let's see this inside. Chishuv hashaot hazmaniot hu achat mishot hayom chelkei 12. So you divide into 12 the hours of the day, shot hayom, in the brackets there. K'shemachashvim et hayom me'amut hashachar ad seita kochavim. So he rules like the Magen Avraham, from dawn till dusk. For seita kochavim, so how do you actually calculate when dusk is? This is a big machlokas, by the way. As we know, like how do you calculate Motzi Shabbos times? So everywhere is different. So v'tzeita kochavim, so what is dark? What is dusk? So he says, Huka 13 dakot achrei shkia, about 13 minutes after shkia, after sunset. But some people say Shuka 20 dakot achrei shkia, it's about 20 minutes after shkia. But when it comes to Shabbos, Motzi Shabbos, we're even more machmir. In Israel, in the winter, it's 36 minutes, and in the summer, it's 42 minutes, and depending where you live. Here, the calculations are a little bit different, and I don't deal with that, Baruch Hashem. So yes, okay. V'yeshmi, and there are those shemachashev et hayom. There are those that calculate the hours of the halachic day. Mehanet tzachama ad shkia, from sunrise to sunset, namely the Gra. However, asfar rishona ikar v'cheinu minhag Yerushalayim. So this points out the minhag Yerushalayim was like the Magen Avraham. 258. We're good. Sofsman Kriyat Shema, Magen Avraham or Gra. That's what we're discussing. Okay. So that's what we say, okay? So Sfaradim do have a certain affinity to Pascha like the Magen Avraham when it comes to mitzvot. There are some who adopt a middle position. So you've seen that Rav Moshe Feinstein rules fundamentally like the Gra, because the right is money. And if you want to be machbir, you be machbir. The Rav Mordechai Eliyahu ruled like the Magen Avraham, the earlier time for Sosma Kriyat Shema. Piskei Teshuvot brings a minhag that it depends. For a Doraita, a mitzvah Doraita, you should pass like Magen Avraham. So something like Kriyat Shema, you should do the earlier time. And for a D'Rabbanan, you can rule like the Gra. That's what the Piskei Teshuvot brings here in source 24. Says the Piskei Teshuvot, HaMakuba b'tfutzot Yisrael likbar k'Magen Avraham. So what's accepted in all communities is like the Magen Avraham, umedin sfeika d'oraita l'chumra. In the case of safek d'oraita, you should be machmir. Ve'ela, however, over the page, what does he say? By the way, this is obviously not agreed by everybody, but over the page, le'inyan shat hadchak, when it comes to shat hadchak, time of need, v'chein and similarly le'inyan sof zman birchot kriyat shema, to actually finish the brachot of kriyat shema, utfila, and also to finish zman tfila, shehi d'Rabbanan, rava chaminag lahagel keshitat hagrav v'harav v'edimei, right? The Arav is like the Shulchan Aruch Harav, right? The Alter Rebbe. So the minhag follows the Gra with the Rabbanans, basically. That's how he rules. And Rav Avadia Yosef also ruled similarly, and here he's brought it by his son in the Yalkut Yosef in source 25, that for Doraitas it's best to be Choshesh for Magen Avraham, for the Rabbanans you can rely on the Gra. In source 25, ideally, yesh lahachmir lagabe sosman kriyat shema lachshov mishad alal tashachar. So ideally, says the Yalkut Yosef, when it comes to Kriyat Shema, which is Doraita, you should do 3 hours finish it by 3 hours after dawn, which is the Machmir opinion. But second paragraph there, it continues to be bold. Umikol makol, but nonetheless, b'shat tzorcha, a time of need, yesh lahakel lachashev et shat mishat hazricha. A time of need, you can calculate the hours from sunrise. Gamle inyan sof Kriyat Shema, also in terms of the final time for reciting Shema. And that's what he does. He has an interesting one here as well. After the bold, he goes v'lachen, and therefore he says what is considered a time of need. Talmid Chacham hatar b'limudo al shat shalayla. The Talmid Chacham who's learning till the small hours of the morning, of the night, very late into the night. Rashai la'acher l'tfilat shacharit. He can be late, go to a later shacharit. V'likro kriyat shema lefi zman hagra, and read kriyat shema according to the gra. So that's interesting spin on it. It's not just a case of Shat Chak, but someone like a Talmid Chacham who's learning to what very late in the night and then goes to a later minyan. It's okay. Interesting point. Tachlis, it seems that the minhag roveach, like the practical, the commonplace minhag, is though to be like the gra, even for Kriyat Shema, it would seem. When it comes to various things, certainly when you look at things like when is Shacharit here. On a Shabbos morning, that's the big question. If Shacharit starts at 9:30 here and Sof Kriyat Shema these days about 5 to 10, then if you're going to do it then you're only doing it according to the Gra for sure. And even sometimes you don't even make it according to the Gra. You have to work out Depends how slow the chazan is for Psukei de Zimra and Shacharit sometimes as well. So that's the question though. Can you say Shema before you come to shul, and why does that work? And that's actually a machloket, and that takes us to the next section, which is if Shacharit is going to be really late, may one recite Kriyat Shema before davening? That takes us over to page 260. Sorry, or as part of brachos, like in korbanot, right? So, right. Okay. So, and the question is, well, is that really okay? Well, you just can do the mitzvah earlier, and then you can recite the brachos. Well, seemingly you would do Kriyat Shema again, but the question is that, but where do we have such a concept? Oh, you can just do Kriyat Shema now quickly, and then when you get to it, it's not really Kriyat Shema, it's just the preparation for tefillah because you've already done Kriyat Shema. But is that really legitimate? So it's actually machloket in the achronim, and though typically we tend to be mekel, especially on Shabbos, it's actually machloket in the Maraim. In the achronim, sorry, not the Maraim, the achronim, between the Ramah versus the Gra. The Gra was opposed to this. We'll see inside now. Okay, so let's see inside. So firstly, the Ramah brings, right, as you pointed out, Yitz, we do have a Shema Yisrael slightly earlier in Korbanot, right? Shema Yisrael, right? Mekadesh Shimcha Barabim is the bracha that we do. In source 26 says the Ramah, V'tov lamar b'shacharit achar Shema Yisrael. So the Ramah adds, it's good that after Shacharit, when you say the early Shema Yisrael in Korbanot, you should add Baruch Shem Kavod Machol Olam Va'ed. Says the Ramah. Why? Kilif Amin, because sometimes Shohim in Kriyat Shema Likrota Shelo Bizmana. You delay reciting Kriyat Shema, and then you end up reading it after the Zman. And that's this way you fulfilled your obligation with this. Now this is a bit of a chiddush because this implies that at least b'diavad, according to the Ramah, it's enough just to recite the first pasuk of Shema together with Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Va'ed. Now we saw previously that's not so pashut, but the Ramah at least b'diavad is willing to rely on it here. The Mishnah Berurah says that's not enough, and really one should recite all 3 paragraphs of Shema early at this juncture. I.e., you get to shul, it's 9:30, not to have any names, God forbid, but you see, oh, the chazan is a schlepper, right? It's going to take time. So you should say the 3 paragraphs right now because you know you're not going to make never. So that means you say them there, all 3. So let's see in the Mishnah Berurah in source 27.
So just a question on that.
Yeah.
The 3 hours. So if you're in part of the world where sunrise may be very early, very, very early in the morning, I know it gets like 2 or 3 in the morning. One of these places where it's light for a long period of time, or over at north, and then 3 hours later, 3 hours later, maybe like 5 in the morning, which may make it impossible for a lot of people to get up. Is there a set rule for that type of place, which is different to the norm?
Yes, don't live there.
Okay.
Seriously, don't live in the North Pole. It causes so many problems. But like in England, we never, like Shacharit was 9:15 on a Shabbos. Without fail, I always had to recite Kriyat Shema early, without fail, every week.
But I think a point in answer to the last question is we're not talking about clock hours. We're talking about seasonal hours. So in a place like I've been in Norway in June, when it hardly gets dark. So the number of hours of sunlight, well, from sunrise to sunset, is not 12. It's a lot more than 12. So 3 seasonal hours is 3/12 of that total period. So although it might have been light at 2,
the hour that the Shouts Maniot is significantly
5.
longer, right?
Could be more like 7.
Right, there you go. It's never. It's right, exactly. That's the thing. It works, right? But yes, but it's still not going to be at 5 in the morning because, right, as David points out, the Shouts Maniot are going to be proportionally longer as well.
Sure.
So if you have 18 hours of sunlight instead of 12, then you've got, and if you have 20 hours of sunlight, it's going to be, okay. Divide that into 12, exactly. Okay. So the Mishnah Berurah points out here that if you are going to chap this early Kriyat Shema, he disagrees with the Ramah and says you have to you should really do all 3 paragraphs. And that goes back to a previous discussion we had. In source 27 says the Mishnah Berurah of Makom sheyaresh hatzibur ya'avru zman Kriyat Shema. Place where you're scared, right? The chazan's going to schlep it out. and they're going to pass man Kriyat Shema by the time you get there. Yechaven, you should have kavana letzeit b'zeh. Now in korbanot, you should have it in mind to fulfill your mitzvah. HaMitzvah aseh de Kriyat Shema. The mitzvah d'oraita kaim alam b'siman. Where is it? It's b'siman samach gimel. The mitzvah tzrichot kavana. That's what we paskin. V'yesh omrim those that say sheyikra kol ha'parasha rishona. We said at least the first paragraph. As the Mishnah Berurah v'yoterta, but it's better she'az that at the beginning in korbanot yikra kol hashlosha parashiyot, all three parashiyos. Kamosh kadam pri chadash kadei lehazkir yetziat Mitzrayim bizman kriyat shema v'chai adam hiskim lepri chadash. Okay, so it's best to read all three paragraphs. If you think that the Tzibra is not going to make kriyat shema, then you should do it then and there. By the way, that's assuming that when you're at korbanot, the time hasn't already passed. From what I've seen so far from Melbourne, 9:30, 9:32, the time hasn't passed. Sorry? Well, then throughout the year, at least they're consistent throughout the year, Chabad, that you always have to recite Shema early. But come winter, come summer. But I think it was in definitely 9:30 something when we first arrived in Melbourne, and I was reciting Shema. There's a question. So certainly, so you just have to keep an eye on it. And you're growing up in England, even 9:15 often. When shul started, it was too late. You had to say it half an hour earlier at home. So that just depends on the time of year. So that's also something which is important to bear in mind, that even you can't wait till you get to shul and then think, oh, what time is man kriyat shema? Because it might, even according to the Gra, certainly in the summer, it might be earlier than you think. Okay. So what do we see from that, though? Either way, even if we rule out the Mishnah Berurah, you have to do all three paragraphs, there is an option to recite Shema earlier and then say the rest, actually properly after Zman. As long as you recite also at least all three paragraphs is preferable. The Gra disagreed with this. Look at source 28, says that the Bir Halacha brings him. He says, I am a Vir Hagra shekatav, writes the Gra. V'li nireh, seems to me, she'ein nachon bazeh. It's not correct in this manner. Let's set below brachot to fulfill the obligation of Shema without reciting the brachot. V'gam lo yismoch geula l'tefillah. And also, you're not doing smichat geula l'tefillah. Why? Because it's true that you recite Shema again later, but that's not the Shema, right? Because it's already after the Zman. Who's sover bazeh?
Sorry, couldn't that redemption mean the exodus from Egypt? In which case, because he could just be referring to if you only say the first paragraph, as opposed to if you've said all three paragraphs, then you've done the exodus.
It's an interesting point. I think, though, that his issue is that it's still after the Zman. You recited Kriyat Shema, you recited Geula, but you haven't done it Bismana.
No, I mean if you say it early.
Right.
Because he's saying the problem with saying it early is that you're not juxtaposing them.
Right.
But if you said all three paragraphs.
Yeah, but it's still not, because you're not really doing Smicha Geula L'Tefillah, because you're doing the three paragraphs at 9:30 and you're only getting to Amida at 10:10.
Oh, well,
so okay. I'm saying you haven't actually juxtaposed the two because
redemption. Sorry, right. I'm thinking.
Right, no, it's all good. But the point is, you put the Shema with the Geula. That's right. If you do all three, but the problem is that your actual mitzvah of Shema you've done at the beginning of shul, and only half an hour if you're really unlucky, 40 minutes in, chazan depending, you're then you've got a big gap. So the Gra says it's not good. And explains the Bir Halacha, but who's sover b'zeh? He passes in this way, kashitat hara'ah, like passes like the Ra, shuvah b'vet Yosef, tetzfei adif letzibur lemeim birkat kriyat shema deraita. That it's better, like the Ra passes, that it's much better to say the brachos with the actual mitzvah, and therefore you shouldn't pluck the three brachos out. Simply, says the Gra, basically, you just move shul earlier. In other words, if you're davening at that time, according to the Vilna Gaon, you shouldn't be doing that. You should bring the minyan to 8:30 or to 9. If you bring it to 9, you're definitely fine, according to the Gra. There's in Alon Shvut, so the late minyan on Shabbos was 8:45, but it used to be in certain parts of the year it was at 8:30, because that way you knew you always got their Kriyat Shema. So that was according to the Gra. So depending on time of year, the late minyan. Maybe like 8:30, 8:45, just depending. So you always finish before. That way you always get it in. So
just out of idle curiosity.
Yeah.
Just out of idle curiosity, Sofman Kriyat Shema at the moment in Oslo is 9:02.
It's 9:02. Well, that's because they're in
Yeah,
the
like-
summer, but the hours are very long, so it does
And
compensate.
that's the summer.
As David,
Yeah, because like
as David
Talid,
pointed out, right?
you can put on your Talid and fill in at you can put on Talid and fill in at 10 to 2 a.m. So
Right. And then you've got a very long wait. So yes.
Why is it a mitzvah to say Shema at the later time, but not a mitzvah to say it early? If you've said it early, it can be a mitzvah, and it can still be a mitzvah saying it late.
So the Gra argues that you shouldn't be taking it out of its brachot. What are you doing? You're plucking it out and doing it earlier. You should be doing everything earlier. The brachot, Amida should all be within this, at that time. That's what he doesn't. That's what he doesn't like, and that's his issue with it. A raya, a proof one could suggest, by the way, I might add, for the Ramah and the Mishnah Berurah, is simply that Chazal themselves. I'm just going to mute. Okay, this is a better background noise. I'll just mute all. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Okay. So a raya, a proof for the Ramah and the Mishnah Berurah, is Chazal themselves say what? They say that Sof Zman Kriyat Shema is 3 hours. Sof Zman Tefillah is after 4 hours. Now, how can you have such a case? Yeah. Because according to the Gra, unless you take 45 minutes over your Amida, over whatever it's an hour over your Amida, you're never going to have a case where you can physically recite Shema up to the end of the 3rd hour, and then you must finish Amida by the end of the 4th hour, unless you really took an hour over your Amida, like Yom Kippur or something, or you're just really from. But like I'm saying, pragmatically, the implication is that it's an hour difference from the end of Shema to the end of Amida, and even the Frumas Chassid doesn't typically, I think, take an hour from Hashem Elokechem Emet to the very end of Amida, an hour. So that seems to imply that there is some room for separating them. It's just an interesting raya, but again, that can be debated. Let's just say,
Rav Johnny.
Yes.
I note that in a Siddur, which you're probably familiar with, the Singer Siddur.
Good old singers, yeah.
Good old Singer. When they use in the Korbanot, when they have the Shema listed, it's only the first pasuk, and then Baruch Shem, and not Be'ahavta like they have in most of the other Siddurim.
Right. It's
so
true.
That's what is it following the
Ramah. The Ramah, right? Yeah.
Well, also out of interest is that one of our previous Rabbonim wanted to start Shachrit a bit earlier, 8:30, but he got vetoed because of tradition. So he wanted to have an 8:30 minyan, so we'd cover the Shema prior to Sof Zman.
It didn't go too well for him.
No, it didn't.
Sure.
Sorry, he was 9 short for a minyan, was he? Okay. Very good. Okay. You're a wicked crowd. Okay. But I was like, even according to the Gra here in Melbourne, it seems that 9:30 are pretty. It's like I'm not sure. I think 9:30 are pretty good as long as you start by 9. I haven't done a whole cycle of the year here yet. So, okay. Oh look, they bring some Zmanim. My Zmanim, excellent website. Here, look, there you go. So, on a winter November day or end of autumn, early winter, Sof Zman Kriyat Shema in Yerushalayim on the 21st of November was 8:48, according to the Gra. Meanwhile, in London on the same day, it was 9:37. Okay, so that's the closest night. So, and then I said, if you're a good old English shul, so you start at 9:15, it's still tight. You won't make it, even though it's that late. But look at the difference though between Yerushalayim versus London. But also look at the Magen Avraham. So you're never going to make the Magen Avraham in Israel unless you say Shema earlier. Because most shuls start, or you go to Hashkama Minyan or something like that, because 8:10 compared to 8. So you've got a range there from 8:10 to 9:37 in London. So you see there's just a difference in Zmanim. And it's also critical. Some people do the following. Some people, because they want to be choshesh, they want to be concerned for the opinion of the Gra, will do as follows. They know that they're going to make it according to the Gra. By the way, it's not clear that we'll make it according to the Gra now. I'll tell you my Zmanim. Zman Kriyat Shema today, Sof Zman Kriyat Shema today was 9:56 a.m. So that means on Shabbos, right? If you go to Shabbos, okay, Shabbos, it's going to be 9:54. So I don't think we can. It depends which minyan you're in, but I don't think that well, certainly not in Beit Yehuda where I'll be on Shabbos, I think. So I don't think that if we start at 9:30, we will be at the end of Shema by 9:54.
Last Shabbos, 9:58 was the time for Sosman. Oh, no, 9:57, and we made it 9:58. We got to Shema by 9:58. So,
we're definitely not going to. Depends, but that's the subbet. But if you look at Magen Avraham on Shabbos is 9:14. So if you want to be concerned, like the Mordechai Eliyahu, you want to be concerned for the opinion of the Magen Avraham, you've got to say Shema before 9:14.
Can you choose different zmanim to follow?
Different zmanim to follow?
That's convenient.
Yeah, nice. What's convenient? You can follow the zman in London. Is that what you want to do? I see. But what you see from here, though, you see the fundamental point here is that some people do is they make a tonight. They want to be concerned for the Magen Avraham, but they don't want to say Shema early. So now we've established that in Melbourne this Shabbos, if you daven at 9:30, you're probably not going to make it in time for 9:54. But assuming let's say Kriyat Shema was 10:05 and you are going to make it, then you're in a catch-22. I can recite Shema at 8 o'clock and be concerned for the opinion of Magen Avraham, but then I have it in the Yotza according to the Gra that are you really supposed to say it with its brachos in the right place? Yeah. Some people make it tonight. They recite Shema extra early and they say, if the halacha is like the Magen Avraham, then this is my Kriyat Shema. But if the halacha is not like the Magen Avraham, then this is not my Kriyat Shema. And what I say later in davening is my Kriyat Shema. So it's a little bit of a shtick there. Going to the Gra, you certainly would recite it earlier in that case, because the Gra himself holds that the Sof Zman is later and you're not supposed to recite it earlier. So, it does seem that Minhag Yisrael and many of these things follows the Gra, despite what the Piskei Teshuvot said. But even so, even this week you wouldn't make it. And anyone who davens not in Hashkama at Mizrahi is presumably relying on the Ramah against the Gra, which is an important point to realize that the Gra that says it's not ideal. But that is that. Okay, what can you say? Yeah.
If you're going to make some Kriyat Shema comfortable, is there any note to still say the first paragraph?
If you're going to, it's not necessary. Yeah. They put ironically they put the first paragraph there because they want to encourage people at least to say the first paragraph in case they don't make it later. But there's not really. No, strictly speaking, it was only ever the first pasuk Shema Yisrael, which is part of that text. So they added the first paragraph in later. No, you wouldn't need to. No. Okay. If you know you're comfortably going to make Kriyat Shema. Okay. We know. Sorry. Yeah.
Wasn't that actually put into davening because tefillah was being checked to make sure you wouldn't say Shema by outside authorities?
It's right. That's why the bracha is Mekadesh et Shimcha Barabim. Yeah. Right. The idea is making it be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim. Right. It's kind of a sad bracha. It's the way it was like the way of sneaking it in earlier, but that sort of was an ample place to recite Shema. It's a good opportunity to remind people to recite Shema if the minyan was going to go late. Okay, so if we just jump to page 263, so we know that Nashim Turot Kriyat Shema, women are exempt for Kriyat Shema. Nonetheless, there are those that say that women should definitely recite Kriyat Shema in as much as it engenders in them. It's a Kabbalat Al Malchut Shemayim, right? They're accepting the yoke of heavenly kingship. There's a question here about whether women have to also recite it by the end of the third hour. So it's just interesting here, they bring Rabbi Fuchs in the Halichos Beis Yisrael. He says here in source 30, Ein chova al habanot v'nashim hakpid al kriyat shema bizman dafka. Since women are p'turot, they're exempt for kriyat shema, then they don't have to recite it by the end of the third hour. And he explains the hesper hadin, the logic for this is mikivan she'nashim einam bechalal hamitzvah. Since women are not actually obligated in Shema, ela mitzad kabbalat al malchut shemaim sheba, other than the actual fact that they're not obligated in Shema, but they're obligated in accepting the yoke of heaven. V'lo mitzad zman kima b'shchiva, but not with regard to waking up and going to sleep. Those times, shahare chelek zeh b'mitzvah hazman gramu. That's obviously a time-bound element to the mitzvah. So strictly speaking, even a woman who wants to recite Shema for kabbalat al malchut shemaim would not have to do it by the end of the third hour. Having said that, it's an easy mitzvah d'oraita to do, and we would encourage women to opt in to recite Kriyat Shema. Yes, that last bit was me, not him. Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry.
I was checking the print.
You were checking your print for that. It says it's in my version. Okay. Just looking at the time, I know you guys hate me because I don't like, you think I don't like machshava, but I'm going to skip over the machshava section, if that's okay, and then we will commence moving from Shema to Tefillah. And we're going to, now we finish Shema, so we're going to, I'm skipping Rabbi Ezra Bick, it's all right, I'm sorry. It's a good sefer of his, which was just translated into English. You should buy it on Tefillah.
Well, an excellent translator.
Thank you.
Oh, I see.
Highly recommend. It's definitely available on Magid. I'm not sure if they're shipped to Australia, but we can do a group buy on Tefillah. It's an important book, in my humble opinion.
They ship pretty exorbitant. Their shipping fees are exorbitant.
Okay.
But they charge about $50 to ship.
I see. Okay, so Isaac, maybe you'll get your daughters to bring it at the end of the year. You get a few copies of Big's book. Anyone coming back from Israel? Okay, so we move now to talking about Tefillah, and the rest of this, and also the next book, first half of the next, we'll be talking about the halachot regarding Tefillah and specifically Shmoneh Esrei. And now that we've concluded looking at Shema, and the question is, what are the correct zmanim when it comes to Tefillah? We discussed obviously Shema, but what about Tefillah? Okay. So we saw already that there was this concept of the notion of people called the Vatikin, right? Who they were careful that when did they recite Kriyat Shema? Right before Nates, in order to recite Shema, to recite Amida with the Nates, with Hanetz Hachama. So let's look at that Gemara again in Brachot Te'am Bet in source 1. Amar Abai says Abai L'Kriyat Shema Kevatikin, right? There was a machloket we saw in the Amoraim, and how do we paskin? When regarding Kriyat Shema, you should be like the Vatikin, like those who daven Vatikin. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan, as Rabbi Yochanan said, Vatikin hayu gomrino ta'im hanetz chama. The Vatikin would finish Shema with the sunrise. Tani nami hachi. This was also taught in a Braita. Vatikin hayu gomrino ta'im hanetz chama kedei sheyismoch k'ol le'tefila v'nimtza mitpalel bayom. That's an important line. That they did this so that they'd be somech k'ol le'tefila, and as a result, they'd be davening bayom. The implication is that what? If you daven before Nates, you're not davening bayom. Okay, you're not davening in the daytime because it's before sunrise. Rabbi Zera said, Rabbi Zera, Micra, what's the pasuk from Tehillim? Yerucha im shemesh lifnei re'ech dorim. Okay, so they should fear you with im shemesh, that with the sun. That's the idea of the Vatikin, that literally the sun would go over the horizon and they would bow down. I once heard Rav Madan, my Rosh Yeshiva, one of my Rosh Yeshiva, talking about Dafka, the idea that, especially in Eretz Yisrael, so that you bow and the sun goes up, and then especially because of where the Mikdash is, the doors to the Mikdash face towards the west, sun rises in the east. So what happens is that you bow down with your back to the sun, right? So you're towards the Kodesh Kodashim, like if you're standing in the courtyard, certainly of the Beit HaMikdash, you're facing towards the west, and everyone's bowing down, and the sun like shoots. But as they bow down for Baruch, for the beginning, the idea is the sun like rises behind you and lights up the whole like towards the Beit HaMikdash. And that's this idea of Yerucha im shemesh. They're bowing to you with the sun, literally, because the sun comes over your back, because you bow westward. If you're in the Azora of the Beit HaMikdash, you bow to the west, and the sun rises behind you as you bow. That's this pasuk Yerucha im shemesh. Just a very special idea, which I thought was worth mentioning. Okay. So what exactly, what does this mean, this Gemara? So firstly, what does the term Vatikin mean? So we know the term Vatikin is the term that we use to refer to an eighth minion, and it comes from this Gemara. Rashi says, what are the Vatikin? Anashim, Anavim, Umachavim mitzvah. So they were Anavim, they were humble, and they how they translate here, adore, Chavivin, right? That they adored the mitzvah, okay? Mitpalel bayom. So what does it mean during the day? So Rashi here qualifies, Dehaneit Tzachama ledivrei hakol yomhu. That sunrise is, according to all opinions, daytime, which is, as we'll see, there's a machloket about davening before Nates. Now, obviously, just important to realize that, so today, so the 6:30 minyan and the 7 minyan at Mizrahi are both before Nates. The only one which is after Nates is the 7:30 minyan. 6:30, because Nates is around 7:35. Today, Nates was, sorry, it's going earlier again. Getting earlier, today it was 7:26. So in a couple, so next week the 7 a.m. minyan, you'll get to Amida after Nates again. So okay. So that's just an important point to discuss, that practically, when you think about our minyanim, this is relevant. Okay. So what's this idea Yerucha im shemesh? So Rashi explains over the page. top of page 284, says Rashi, Matai mityarin mimcha. When is it that they're in fear of you? When they accept your aura over themselves. That is malchut shemaim shema kablim alehem, they create shema. They're accepting your kingship, which is what you do with shema. So that's also explaining this idea of geula and tefillah together. In geula, we accept God's kingship, and then that sort of engenders a desire to daven to Hashem. Im shemesh, what does that mean? Klomar, that is to say, says Rashi, kasher hashemesh yotzeh, as the sun emerges. I know with sunrise. Okay, what's the point about the Areach, the moon? So the Gemara here, based on this pasuk, makes a parallel that mincha is also supposed to be as the sun goes down, right? Im dimdumei chama. Why is it called dimdum? Because dam is red, so the reddening of the sun, meaning when the sun gets hazy as it sets. Okay, we're not talking about mincha now. We'll get to that down the line. Okay. And we saw, by the way, there was a little bit of development. We saw previously, the Rambam really says we should all be davening nates, always. And it's only im, and remember what the Rambam said, if im avar, if a person deliberately missed nates, you can daven later. The Rambam really thought we should all be davening nates. The Shulchan Aruch has a slightly softer version of it. If you look in source 3 here in Aruch Chaim Chet, says the Shulchan Aruch, sorry, he still pushes for nates, but he's not as insistent as the Rambam. Right, so Shulchan Aruch in source 3. Zman kriyat shema shel shacharit. Time is sheyiret chavero ragil mokatzat. Okay, berichuk dalat amon v'akirenu in the bold. Umitzvah min hamuvchar likrotak vatikin. It's best to read it a Shema like the Vatikin. Shehayu mekavnim likriyatam ma'at kolem hanetz hachama. They would read Shema just before nates. Kadesh yisayim kriyat Shema b'rokoteh im hanetz hachama, so that they can conclude Shema as the sun rises, and that way the yismoch hatfilah miyad b'hanetz hachama, and then bring it adjacent to tefillah as the sun goes up. And umisha yuchal lechaven lasot ken scharo merubeh meod. Someone who can really do this, their schar is great. So I said next week or the week after in the 7 a.m. minyan, you'll have a mahudar minyan, which will be scharo harbe meod. So everyone should go to the 7 minyan from next week. So are you charging commission or just admission? Oh, this ain't commission. Okay, commission too. But all right. Okay. So that's what you see. That's what you see from there, though. That the ideal is to do it afterwards. Okay, but it would still seem though that you're supposed to really daven after nates. Okay, certainly you should do it. Ideal to do it at nates. But are you allowed to daven? Are you allowed to go to 6:30 minyan tomorrow? Are you allowed to go to the 7 a.m. minyan tomorrow? You might not finish the discussions now, I'm afraid. So the answer is yes. So I don't get in trouble. But it's implied from the Gemara elsewhere that the people would definitely daven earlier than nates, which seems contrary to the Gemara. So look in source 4, the Gemara in Brachot Daf Lamed. We hear the following story. Some stories about Shmuel's father. This is one of them. So Avur de Shmuel v'Levi. So that's Shmuel's father and Levi. Shmuel and Levi were not brothers. Avur de Shmuel v'Levi. Ki havu bai lemeipak le'orcha. When they would wanted to go out on a journey, havu makadmei matzle. They would get up early and daven, i.e. before nates. V'chi hava matis man kriyat shema karu. And when the time for kriyat shema would arrive, they would recite it then. Says the Gemara, Kaman. Who is this like? Ki hai Tana, like the following Tana. The Tanya, as we learn in the Breita. Hishkim, let's say the derech, someone gets up early to go on a journey, and they've got to go out to work or to travel. Maviyim lo shofar v'toker. Even though it's early, you can bring them a shofar and before the zman to blow it, like on Rosh Hashanah. Lulav v'maneh. They can also shake lulav before nates. Megillah, they read a Megillah b'koreba. You can read Megillah also before nates. Uchshei yagiyah zman kriyat shema koreh. And when the time of kriyat shema comes, then you read. Hishkim leishef b'karona b'sfina. If a person went to go in a wagon or on a boat journey, mitpalel, they daven early. Ukshei gizman kriyat shema, and when the time for kriyat shema comes, koreh, you read again later. That's the Tanakama. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says over the page, I think this will let me over the page. Bein kach uvein kach, in either way, in either case, Kore kriyat shema umitpalel. Kadesh yismoch gula l'tfilah. It's best also to do kriyat shema earlier, and that way you do smicha gula l'tfilah rather than do kriyat shema later. Okay, but what you see here, you do have these certain heterim to daven early. That's what comes out from this Gemara. Now, how early is early? Sorry?
Is as the exception or as a rule?
So I'm not going to lie. The pshat seems to, the simple reading of the Gemara seems to be, and the poskim after that, that really we're talking about somebody who has yotzel derech. The whole heter to daven after nates, to daven before nates, is somebody because they've got to be somewhere. That's the implication of the Gemara. So it's just something to, and we'll develop this more also next time, but we'll see what we get through now. But that's an important point to note. Okay. But according to everyone in the Gemara here, it seems that there is a heter in certain circumstances. Somebody's going out on a trip or whatever it is on a journey to recite Amida early, even before nates. But just how early can you daven? What is the absolute earliest? So Rashi here implies that really early, even before Alot possibly. Look at the Rashi here. And certainly had Tosfot understand him, but look at source 5. Have a Makadmi, they would daven early. Says Rashi in source 5, Kodem Hayom, before the day. So that could imply like even before Alot. Makoran of Asfina, if you have to go in a wagon, i.e. you have to go on a boat trip where you can't concentrate. Ika ba'atuta demaya. So what's the issue there? Fear of water. What's the issue of davening on a boat? We're not talking about a fancy cruise ship. We're talking about a little dinghy here, where you're right. There's a fear. You're not going to be able to concentrate properly. Right? There's danger. Okay. Kura create Shema. You should recreate Shema. Yamtin ad shegizman create Shema vikrena. Should wait for the time to create Shema. And then afterwards read it. That was the second opinion there. I think, that was the opinion of Rabbi Lazar. Okay, and the second opinion. But what do we see from here though? That seems to be pretty early. The Rashi, it seems that Tosfot definitely had a slightly even different version to Rashi. Our version of Rashi says Kodem Hayom, before the day. So I could still argue that Kodem Hayom means, according to Rashi, what? Just before nates. But even Rashi would agree that it has to be after Alot. But Tosfot seems to have a different version. If you look in source 6 here, what did Tosfot say? Avodah Shmuel is like Perish Rashi Kodem Amud Hashachar, also known as Alot Hashachar, right? Before dawn. So that was their version of Rashi, at least, or at least that's how they understood him. That Rashi was saying that if you're stuck going on a journey, you can daven before dawn. At least that's their version of Rashi. Say Tosfot Voloni Red, that doesn't seem right. The Imken, because if that were the case, Lo hayu yotzin baklal, you're not yotz at all. The Adain eno yom, it's not day, it's still night. In fact, strictly speaking, you can still daven Mariv, right? At 2 in the morning, you still daven Mariv. Lachen nireh, and therefore it would seem, compared to Rabbeinu Chananel, like from Rabbeinu Chananel, that what's the case? To mishe Allah amot hashachar ka'amar. That's what it means. From after dawn. The Havuma Amakdami, the fact that they will get early, what does that mean? It means Kodem Haneit Sachama Kama, before sunrise. It's not the Ikar's Tefillah. It's not the primary time for davening. So Tosfos say it cannot be. There is no way that you can daven before Alot, before dawn. So even here, it was only after dawn.
That's interesting because we actually say when we lie down and when we get up.
Oh,
and it sounds like we made an assumption that we lie down at night and we get up in the morning, but it may have taken it a lot further than that, saying actually when you lie down and when you get up, not
right. Well, it's interesting because it's also wanted to note that Shafcha Kumecha was said also by Kriyat Shema, not by Mida, but it's an interesting point though. Rosoloveitchik has a whole thing on. I'll just might as well say it now. We're not going to finish the unit now anyway. The Rosoloveitchik has a whole thing on. He says it about Bein Hashmashot, like twilight, between Shkia and Seit. But the same thing is true at the beginning of the day, between Alot and Nates, right? I.e. between, so we call it Safek Yom, Safek Laila. It's like a doubt is day or night. Yeah. Soloveitchik said, don't look at it as a Safek, look at it as a stira, as an inherent contradiction. My Rebbe Rav Moshe Lichtenstein put it the best way. He goes, it's a stira between two ways of looking at the world. Astronomically, it's nighttime. The sun is set. In terms of functionality, there's still light out. People are there. That's how Rav Soloveitchik looked at Bein Hashmashot. That it's the sun is down. Astronomically, it's night. But in terms of humanity, it's still light. It's still day. There's still or, right? There's no sun, but there's or, right? And the same thing is true by the morning as well. There's light after Alot's first light. There's light, but astronomically, it's still the sun hasn't come up yet. So it's sort of it's not a suffix, but it's rather a stira between two ways of looking at day and night. So that might also, the idea of kumecha is of kumecha in terms of the human act because it's light and people are out, but it's not yom from the sense of the sun hasn't risen yet.
So is it an individual thing?
Sorry?
Is it an individual thing? Like
No, that was just good lomdus. I don't think it was really an individual thing, but yeah. But I think there's certain objectivity to it. I don't think he would have extended it to beyond space. It's like nowadays, for example, everyone's out at night, with electricity. So, but I'm not sure he would extend it to that. But certainly in terms of the lights, even though there's no sun, that was the idea. Okay. Tosfot, so we saw they say that the earliest is to daven, even if according to this heter of the Gemara, it's only after Alot. And Rambam rules the same way in Source 7, Hilchot Tefillah, Perek Gimel rules the Rambam. Tefillah Tashachar mitzvatashi etchelit palel im hanetz hachama. So as we saw already, the best way according to Rambam is you've got to daven nates. But he says there, hamitpalel tefillah kodim zmana, someone who davens early, lo yatsa yedei chovatos. If you daven too early, you don't fulfill your mitzvah. L'chozer mitpalel ota bismana. You've got to daven again in the right zman. So the Rambam is very specific that to daven after alot but before nates is really, according to the Rambam, at least only shat adchak, time of great need. So the Rambam is clear on that, and the Rambam understands that Gemara of they will yotzela derech, they're going on a journey, to be a case of shat adchak basically, but not that you can just rely on this as you like. Nonetheless, and look how the Shulchan Aruch rules though in the next source. It's also important to see this. The Shulchan Aruch himself, it's not so clear why we can do early minyanim. Look in source 8. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Zman tfilat hashachar mitzvata sheyatchil im hanetz hachama. Regarding the time for shacharit, it's really, Zman really starts with sunrise. So the 6:30 minyan and 7 minyan no good. Kedichtiv, as it says, Yerucha im shemesh. However, the im hit palel misha'al ala amat hashachar v'heir pnei mizrach yatsa. But if b'diavad one did daven after dawn when there was light already, even though the sun hasn't risen, b'diavad you still fulfill your obligation. Can you do this lechatchila? So only it would seem shat adchak. Of course, the look in Sifchet there. B'shat adchak at a time of great need, kogon shesrech l'hashkim l'derech, you have to go up and go on a journey. Yachol hit palel misha'ama amat hashachar. You're able to go early and daven early from Alat HaShachar. The Yamtim Likrok Shema Adshiki is Mana, but you should wait till Zman Kriyat Shema, which said from is the difference where you can tell the difference between the colors of the tzitzit. But he says he allows it lechatchila only b'shat adchak. That's what implies here. That really that if you were to recite it before Alot, before dawn, then like Rashi said, that's no good. And that's how the Mishnah Berurah also understands. Someone can say,
I just ask you, but what about doing things like Tzurba Zimra before dawn if you need it?
That before dawn?
Tefillah is considered the Amidah.
That's true, you're right. I certainly wouldn't say the brachas of Baruch She'amar Yishtabach before Alot.
Right.
Also, an important point to realize is that if you're dealing with, we want to talk about Zman Talit and Tefillin, then practically anyway, Zman Talit and Tefillin is a bit after dawn. So unless you had a really long Psukei de Zimra, you wouldn't be reciting Psukei de Zimra, then you wouldn't be wearing your Tefillin or Talit anyway by the time you ended it, if you started before dawn. Even if you were
wouldn't there be a problem with saying Birchot HaShachar when it's not Shachar yet?
So that's another important point, which is that it sort of messes around Birchot HaShachar, and never mind Birchot HaTorah as well. Those would not seemingly be able to be recited, certainly according to Tosfot and the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch. And that's an important point. And the Mishnah Berurah really does seem to not be so helpful for Al Minyanim. You look in source 9, Im Hanetz, right? Says the Mishnah Berurah in source 9, you should really best to be lechatchila to daven after nates. Af bimei haslichot, even when you've got slichot and you've got to get really early, even though in the winter. Right, because obviously in the winter, sunrise is later. When they come to shul early in the morning, they get up early. It's best to wait until after sunrise to do Amida. As we said earlier, okay, I'm sham. However, let's say if somebody has to go out on the way, and the like, any other case of tchak, right? Extenuating circumstances, or but honest, they can't help it. Then the mutter lahaktim. Then it's mutter to bring it earlier. Al kol panim, nonetheless, yamtinu milavarech ala tefillin ad sheyakir et chavero right haragilim. Right, like the 6:30 minyan. Right, you have to wait for in the winter especially. They wait till after Ishtabach, right? Until Zman's talit and tefillin. The b'makodim asal lavarech alehen, because it's prohibited to make a bracha on talit and tefillin before that Zman, as we said earlier. Okay, but we see here though there is a push for the Mishnah Berurah that really people should daven after nates if there's no heter. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that's why at Mizrahi on Shavuos we had the latest minyan in town, because on Shavuos morning for those who did after Tikkun Leil, because we wanted to make sure that, because we wanted to have Amida after nates, so we davened to like 7, like we got to Amida by 7:30 or something, which is was after nates, whereas other minyanim started earlier, because when it's a Yom Tov, it's hard to say there's any sort of heter of Shat Chak that people got to get out to work, or people can rely on Shat Chak when it's Yom Tov. And we all know that the first thing that most people are going to do is just go straight to bed if they've been up all night.
It's probably not just the latest in town, it's probably the latest post-Tikkun Leil in the world.
This is true. I don't know what they do in Auckland, but yes.
But there's also
yes,
some of the early brachot that you can't do, that you ideally should hear somebody else say in the morning if you kept your... I'm just trying to think of what it is, but it's the
Birkat HaShachar, Birkat HaTorah, actually. Some Birkat HaShachar.
So be waiting for the next lot to turn up, start saying.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Well, we always have that in yeshiva. We always call them. It was always like the token nebuch, right? The guy who couldn't stay up all night, right? The nebuch had to come and read for everyone. Yeah, say the brachas to everyone. But that's why I think like Shavuos, I was quite happy that they davened after nates, because it was no. And I was up all night. It was also good because there's a lot of learning, but it's hard to call it any sort of shat, any sort of tchak, time of great need, when it's Yom Tov and no one's really running anywhere. Yeah. Although someone told me that in the Kol HaBeis Talmud they davened before Nate, so I can't comment. So yeah, sorry, they finished. Maybe they had really long Pesukei Zimra. Could be. That's okay. Okay, so let's just see a little bit more here before we end off. So just the last paragraph on the page, Amud HaShachar. So we said that Amud HaShachar after dawn b'diavad is good, and also if this person has a great need. Amud HaShachar, what is this? This dawn. Hu mashe matchil HaShachar lahavrik b'miksatom atzmat. It's when it's what we call first light, aka dawn, right? When it starts to appear a little bit. Umashma midivrei mechaber, the kodem ha'ir, that before there's any light, af b'diavad lo yatsa. In other words, the Shulchan Aruch paskins against Rashi, and paskins like Rambam and Tosfot that no way you can daven even b'diavad before nates, before what's it called, before Alot HaShachar. The Magen Avraham is in the minority there, but so certainly you can't daven before Alot HaShachar. That's how we rule, even b'diavad. And times of need, we're makel if people have work and things to do. So certainly anyone has to go to work early, it would seem that maybe they fall in the category of tchak. And here, let's look at the Isha Yisrael here, who also writes this in source 10. B'shat tchak. So you might argue Yotze L'derech means you've got to go to another town. The Isha Yisrael expands it to anyone who's got to go out to work. Look in source 10. Isha Yisrael says, B'shat tchak, time of great need, kugon, such as, shetzrech letzeit mukdam la'avodato. Someone's got to get early to work. Or sha'ar on it, so any other sort of extenuating circumstance, won't be able to daven in its man, and they won't be able to daven until after time of tefillah passes, i.e. after 4 hours passed. If he's able to, Yamtin ad lizman sheyaket chaver memerchak 4 amot. You should at least wait till the time of talit and tefillin. And that's what he rules here. Here, oh, they love to bring my zmanim. So look here again. They have here. Look at Chicago. Okay, this is Chicago. Okay, I can beat that though. Let's just look at London there. But here's Chicago in December. Okay, so earliest talit and tefillin 6:14. Sunrise is 7:11. Okay, that's not so different to here now. But in London, so in the winter, Nate's is 8:02 easily. They usually announce it on the radio. I remember going to school. They give the weather and then they'll tell you sunrise will be at 8:02. Like still not sunrise. So for people to rely after sunrise, it's crazy. Especially when they talked about keeping British summertime throughout the year, which they're now trying to do in the States, to keep summertime throughout the year. It's really going to mess up tefillah issues if that goes through. And then they always are in the UK. They always have the chief rabbi's office, pushing against it because of what it would do to the zmanim.
In
we'll
Chicago,
end
you'd
there.
also,
David,
you'd also have to make your way through several meters of snow.
This is true. This is also true. This is very true. Yeah. And then only to find that the shul's closed because it's the zman's not right. So yeah, snow day, exactly. But this is just an important background. Again, practically, it does seem that certainly in Chutz La'aretz, the consensus is to rely on earlier minyanim. Certainly, if people have to go out to work and the like, based on that, will fall under the category of Shana Chag. We've got Marav next door, so we'll stop there and we will Bezrat Hashem continue next week.
Sure.
Just to remind people that I'm doing it in person on Thursdays at 8:30. We start in advanced halacha chabura. We're learning chuppah v'kiddushin inside Tzurba Shiur, Shulchan Aruch Nosei Kelim, and I try not to translate. We just read through and summarize without translating word for word. And those who would like are welcome to join at 8:30 Thursdays. No Zoom, only in person. So yeah. And we will see you then. Okay. Have a good evening.